I had a house that was destroyed by a massive wildfire in 2015, and I'm sharing my experience on this channel, hoping that it's going to help some folks in LA. I'm not an expert on insurance or building. I went through the whole process. If you've not watched my viral video on dealing with insurance companies in the aftermath of a wildfire, go find it. It's on this platform. There's also a second video about the unexpected upside of your house not surviving when your whole neighborhood burned down. But today I'm sharing some thoughts about the rebuilding process and what I experienced, and the likely reality that Angelenos are going to face as they look to rebuild. So at least initially, you're going to be dealing with architects, contractors, and the building department in your city. After our fire, which burned over 1,000 homes, these folks were in high demand, as you can imagine. It was very hard for us to find people to work with. Some of our neighbors, for this reason, decided to go with modular or prefab houses, and there's some really nice ones out there. Not cheap. But they still needed someone to prep their lot, clean their lot, pour their foundation, and do all of the other site work necessary to prepare for the arrival of that prefab. And of course, all those folks were in short supply. Now, I know that all kinds of neighborhoods burned. When our neighborhood burned, the biggest problem was that no lot was the same, and a lot of those lots were right up against a year-round creek. And a lot of those homes and cabins had been built decades ago. In fact, our home was almost 100 years old. First thing we heard from the county was, hey, due to modern environmental regulations, you are not going to be able to put your home in the same footprint as before. You're going to have to move it back 25 feet from the creek bank. So suddenly our lot was a lot smaller. What we ended up doing was negotiating the purchase of a lot next door so that we could kind of spread out a little. There were also road setbacks that weren't in existence when our original home was built, and we had to abide by those as well. So if your home is near a waterway, or if your home is more than 40 years old, you might be on the hook for some new regulations that will impact how and where you put your new home. And we had to figure out all of this before we even applied for our building permit. So this really delayed our process. And our county only had one planner. Remember, 1,000 homes burned. So I think it took us almost a year to get our building permit. And that was after waiting 2 years for the county to tell us where we could actually put our building. Now, in the midst of this, your insurance company tells you, well, you've got 2 years to get this all done, right? And 2 years had gone by and we hadn't even started. So we were constantly renegotiating with them on the timeline. And they were pretty good about it, except with the contents of the home that we were replacing. You have to buy those right now and file for reimbursement, because we're not going to just let that go on for years. So we had to buy all these appliances and furniture and everything, and we had to find a place to put it. In some cases, we just gave the stores a deposit and they gave us a receipt, and then we took possession of those items like appliances once the house was finally done. And that was literally years later, and I lived in fear of those stores going out of business and us not getting our merchandise. So those are the major things that you might be dealing with. Shortage of critical professionals to help you rebuild. Your city's planning department being completely overwhelmed and not able to process those permits. Updated environmental or other types of regulations that would prohibit you from building exactly the same way or in the same spot that you did before. So you should be thinking about all of these things and researching whether they're grandfathering people in for building in the same footprint, for example. And you may not know for a while. I mean, these cities are probably scrambling. They're currently in crisis, so it's probably going to be some time before you know. And then finally, once you get the building underway, and we had this problem due to the high demand, and we were rebuilding during COVID, everything was more expensive. And we had already taken the replacement cost from our insurance company. And so anything that was kept going up, we kind of had to eat that cost. And there were certain things that our contractor did that delayed the finished project. So for example, waited to order the whole house fan, and then we found out we couldn't get one for 4 months because of COVID supply chain issues. And we couldn't finish the roof until that house fan was in. So our house sat there for 4 months with nothing being done on it. A lot we could do. So all this is to say, you should plan for the start of your rebuild to take longer than you would think. You should plan for the rebuild to take longer than you would think. and you should talk to your insurance company about an extension of ALE, which we talked about in my insurance video, the additional living expenses, because you might need that. You might need to live in a place a lot longer than 2 years, because it might take you a lot longer than 2 years to rebuild. And hopefully all the city governments in LA and the state of California will do some grandfathering and fast tracking of things to help people get back in their new homes. Hang in there, LA.